and show me the way to just be love, and show me the way to just be love. I surrender.
Hello and welcome to Rewire Your Attachment Style. This is Maya Diamond, and I'm so excited to be here today interviewing this wonderful, amazing couple, Ani and Lee. Welcome. So happy to have you here.
Thank you, Maya. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so beautiful to be connected finally.
Yay. Awesome. So I'm just going to introduce Ani and Lee before we dive in. So Ani Manyan is widely known as the ultimate mirror, is a trusted advisor to the world's leading visionaries, entrepreneurs, and leaders, and the host of the You Are Limitless podcast. He is notorious for taking high achievers who have already created significant success and influence to far greater levels outside their realm of possibility by giving them an unfair advantage access to the vast creative potential of their mind. He helps them transform their consciousness, the internal operating system that drives their thinking, feeling, behavior, and results to a level where they can bend conventional reality and become limitless. 100% of his clients have gone on to create profound impact and change in the world, as well as lasting happiness and personal well-being for themselves. Welcome, welcome, Ani. And Lee helps creative, powerful women and couples cultivate emotional and erotic intelligence so they can create untamed intimacy in their romantic partnerships. She uniquely integrates psychology and sensuality and shares powerful communication tools and somatic practices that allows clients to connect deeply to their own bodies. By guiding clients into deeper self-love, acceptance, curiosity, and play, Lee helps them boldly open their hearts in order to give and receive the epic love they desire. So wonderful to have the two of you here. I would love to dive in and ask you, how did the two of you meet? And how long have you been together?
You're tossing the ball to me?
I'm tossing the ball to you.
Well, it's ironic that our stories are pretty similar to one another. So this is good. We don't have completely different renditions.
Right.
But we met, unlike most modern day people, at a workshop, not online.
Yeah.
So old school. We met at a workshop, and it was a workshop actually that we had both been gifted tickets to.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't something that we had planned on going to, but we met at this workshop, and early in the day we struck up conversation and really hit it off, just even from a sort of professional perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And we remained friends for a number of months after that workshop, and we'd grab coffee here and there. There was no sign of any romantic interest, not at least from him, for months. And I was, off doing my thing in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was only a few months after we had become friends that we'd started to develop a romantic connection, all led by me, I will say. I definitely initiated that part of the relationship. And since then, I feel like we've traveled lifetimes together. We are actually celebrating our 1-year anniversary this month.
Beautiful. Happy anniversary. That's
Thank
so
you.
Wonderful.
You called it, right? You called it like...
I did. Well, but not quite. When we first met, the day we met, I said, I think you're the man I've been asking for.
This is literally the first conversation we had.
But I did not mean romantically. I meant the kinds of things we were talking about. I thought he would be a great male counterpart to leading intimacy work with. So I was looking for a male partner to lead this work with so that there was a more balanced perspective at workshops and retreats.
Yeah.
And I thought he was going to be the one. And it turns out he is, literally. But I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So I did have an intuition.
Totally. Yeah, I love that you said that and just spoke. It's interesting how sometimes we just speak these things and we're kind of surprised when we say them, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool. Awesome. And so are you saying, so it sounds like when you first met, there was like, you were felt drawn to each other. Did you guys feel attraction towards each other?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
so at the workshop, I'd gotten like 3 hours of sleep the night before, and I was sitting there half asleep, despite drinking some coffee. And I remember Lee got up to speak. It was a workshop to really develop your public
Oh,
speaking,
nice.
voice.
Uh-huh.
And her presence was like a thunderbolt, and she had such a powerful being, and she just radiated energy. And it was like that scene from The Godfather when he's struck by the thunderbolt in Sicily. And yeah, I felt really drawn to her. I felt really drawn to her energy, and I felt really drawn to how she expressed herself. And I really find that to be one of her most attractive qualities, the way she's, really fully expressed.
Beautiful. And how did you, what energetically drew you to Lee, Ani? Like, what did you notice energetically?
There was
Oh wait, I was asking.
Lee.
Lee, sorry.
It happens all the time. They're both kind of androgynous names.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Thank you.
You can call us the other person. It's fine. Energetically, there you just had this. I don't know if austere is the right word, but he had this unwavering presence. There was one moment at the workshop where I was talking to another woman, and I could just feel him sort of out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, okay, he's not going anywhere. He's chilling, and I could feel him there.
The solidity.
Yeah, there was just a strength of character and a strength of presence that's kind of beyond words, and I feel that all the time to this day.
Beautiful. Wonderful. And I'm curious, what are some kind of practices that are kind of rocks in your relationship? In other words, do you have any structures in place in your relationship, like a date night or a check-in or couples therapy or something that is like, but especially something that just the two of you do, that really you feel like is really beneficial for your relationship?
Yeah,
And
the first thing that comes to mind is
regularly.
Is going beyond practice. This relationship itself is a practice. This relationship is really a practice of supporting each other through their spiritual and personal growth. So this relationship itself is, on a moment-to-moment basis, a container of transformation. And with this relationship, we're doing a lot of things very differently from what we've done in past relationships. In the past, we, as it happens for, a lot of couples, they're attracted to each other's trauma, and there's nothing more attractive than a trauma bond, which, the pieces fit like jigsaw puzzles.
Yes.
And, typically there's the infatuation stage, and then at each of these successive stages, there's breakpoints, and most people break up like in those breakpoints. Right. What we've done is we have entered into union, not just with each other, but with each other's highest selves, with each other's highest truths and highest potential. And so we've essentially made the commitment to hold each other to their highest potential, and beautiful. To be this unwavering reflection of, who they are in truth. So, our relationship has evolved so much. In the beginning, we, given that we're both really kind of obsessed with, human behavior and intimacy and connection, we'd spend minutes just looking into each other's eyes, not as a deliberate act of, okay, now we're going to do some eye gazing, but we would just fall in to these little pockets of presence where I remember I'd be, doing the dishes, and I'd turn around and Lee would be, sitting at the table, and she'd look into my eyes and I'd look into hers, and we would sort of slip in to a state of pure presence. And in that state, we were just pure awareness, recognizing pure awareness without this identification with, these ego attributes that, in past relationships, when we saw each other, that we would have seen the narrative structure, the story, like, you are this way, you always do this, you always do that.
Right.
You want to share some more?
Yeah. Something that's a pretty unique practice that we have is we will share about our past sexual experiences with one another. This has actually been a really profound practice for us because, I have found in many of my past relationships that once I was in a relationship with someone, my sexual being before that point ceased to exist. And I use it in air quotes, as if I didn't have any sexual experiences that I enjoyed and loved, or men that I still cared about, even while with this person.
Yeah.
And so we've created a lot of intimacy by seeing the fullness of the other person, the fullness of their sexual desire, of their fantasies, of their kinks, of, what lights them up and turns them on, what really turns them off. And it's great because I get to know him through storytelling, and he gets to know me through storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's just something that happened before we met. And to get to know who he is in his fullness, because I might not always bring some of those sides out in him, and vice versa, but we still get to have those sides present. And, when we hold space for that for one another, we've worked through a lot of shame, guilt, things we were hiding or that we had never told anyone before. So we always enter into that kind of practice with a lot of reverence. And of course, if someone is not willing to have that kind of conversation at the moment, we can always say, hey, why don't we talk about this another time? I'd like to just be here with you right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is really also, stretched. Our relationship is really like a laboratory for us for transformation, especially from, relational perspective. And so this is also extended to, healing sexual trauma. And one of the many ways we've sort of held space for each other has been in those deep places of vulnerability, of trauma, of, intense experience that, we never were supported through, we were never held through. And, it's sort of like so deep inside us that it takes an unconditional space of safety. And so we've been able to do that for each other in a really, really, really beautiful way. And, Lee's helped me heal just a lifetime of, sexual trauma, and a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of, disconnection with myself. And one of her abilities, one of her superpowers, is to be a really, really, really safe space. And in that safety, she brings such a presence of acceptance. It's really powerful. So, one of the things we do is we'll habitually like hold that space for each other, and anyone can request that. Hey, can you hold space for me for this? Or if we naturally seem to be falling into this place where, hey, there's some sensitivity here, there's a little bit of tension here, there's something coming up for me, we can sort of slip into that. Okay, would you like to process this? Would you like to dive into this and explore with curiosity, like what this is? Would you like me to hold space for you? And so this practice of, hey, what do you need right now? Like, what are you feeling right now? Is there anything I can support you with? Like these 3 magic questions, we end up using, pretty much every day. And honestly, it's transformed situations where there might be, just the perfect conditions for conflict into opportunities for connection.
Yeah, that's huge. I just want to mirror a couple of things. One, to be able, the ability to hear about past sexual experiences and include those as, information is, takes a level of security inside to be able to hear that. And also I want to also add that I think it takes a level of, I also think that it's almost like a feminist act for a man to be able to hear about past experiences of a woman that he's with, and to not have that color, like because I think there's like an old paradigm for women around, like, the virgin whore complex, right? And so it's like, men kind of want to, what I've seen in a lot of relationships is that men want to see their women as like only with them, right? And so to be able to say like, oh yeah, you're a person, I'm a person, we both have these sexual paths, I think is really liberating for both people, and also exactly inclusive of who you are as a being. Exactly.
Right.
So
And
I just want to mirror that, because that is a very radical act, I believe.
And, to be honest, I'll, take the opportunity to speak on behalf of all men. If a man is feeling triggered because of something that's,
Shared.
true of that a woman's experienced, or, she's, had in her life, that's not her responsibility,
right,
to make the trigger go away in the man. I mean, the man needs to do his work. And, the magic question that I use with men who are having challenges being unconditionally with their partners is, what is the work that is mine to do? Right?
So
what
good.
is this bringing up in me? Right? Where is my insecurity being triggered? Where is my sense of inadequacy coming in? Where am I feeling pain? Where am I feeling less than? That I'm about to take, squish into a ball, and throw at my partner, and make her wrong, and make it her fault, and project my anger at her, because it's easier for me to lash out at my partner than for me to hold myself in my pain. And this is the reason why men have really projected so much pain and violence and mistrust and non-acceptance and almost like a sense of confinement on women, because women's role in men's life is to really point to the places in them where work needs to be done, right? And when men see their internal experience through that lens, then there's so much value. There's such a gift in being like, wow, what is this bringing up in me? Wow, it's interesting. I'm feeling this charge. I'm feeling this energy. Ooh, it's interesting. What's happening in me when she says that about this past lover that she had? Like, because objectively, that has got nothing to do with me.
Right. Totally. 100%.
And so what a gift we can give to our partners by allowing them to see themselves using us in that way.
Yeah. So beautiful. I love that question of like, what is this bringing up in me? Because the taking responsibility for those feelings instead of exactly lashing them out is so important in relationship.
Can I share one more practice? This one's juicy.
Please.
This one's super juicy.
I love it.
In addition to using this to really grow ourselves and our relationship, we also do this work with clients, which is using psychedelics as a tool for creating deeper connections, and also for clearing past trauma, past blocks. And so psychedelics have actually been a huge tool for us. And the way we've used them in our relationship, it's been absolutely profound. We've been able to sort of, reprocess lifetimes of shame, of guilt, of punishment, of self-loathing, of judgment, of, all sorts of trauma. And we've been able to find a level of closeness and connection and devotion. And the word really is devotion, because we've unlocked a level of devotion for each other and for ourselves, to be honest, because we can't relate to anyone else unless we can relate to ourselves, because we can only love the other as much as we can love ourselves. We can only be present with the other as much as we can be present with ourselves. So this has been, I think, like, chime in, Lee, like one of the most profound practices that we've incorporated.
So profound. I forgot to mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really has been.
And has that been self-facilitated or facilitated by another with the two of you? Just so I have a sense.
So both. We've both participated in some of our dear friends who were also trained facilitators holding space for us.
Nice.
We've participated in a lot of healing in a small group setting, and then we've sort of facilitated our own journeys as well.
Yeah.
And this is work that Ani and I do with, sort of out in the world. And wow, the things that we have been able to see and uncover, it really gets at the heart of human experience. All we want is to be loved, to be seen, to be held, to feel safe, to feel connected.
Yeah.
And on a day-to-day basis, when, all of the shit piles up, sometimes it can be hard to say, hey, babe, I just need a hug. I'm feeling really inadequate right now.
Yeah.
It comes out in some other way, but that's what's really underneath. And the intentional use of psychedelics in this way allows us to really cut through all the crap and say, oh my gosh, this is the core of my humanity. I want to tell you this, and I want to share this with you. And please, let's just keep doing this together.
Beautiful, beautiful. So I want to kind of shift. We're going to go back to childhood. I want to know, what was it like? What was the relationship that was modeled to you growing up? Like, if you can just share some elements of what romantic relationship model did you see growing up? And maybe a little bit about how that affected you, just because a lot of my clients and the people who are listening, had challenging romantic models. And so part of what I like to do is show people you don't have to recreate the parent model that you saw.
Can I curse? That's the answer. Well, like many of your clients and like many people all across the world, we did not have healthy models of relationships growing up.
Yeah.
Not in our households, probably not anywhere in our extended family either. And, fairy tales on TV was as good as it got, basically. Yeah. I'll speak for myself in saying that, my mother had me very late in life. And so she wasn't sure if she wanted a child or not, but alas, here I am.
Yeah.
And, both of my parents traveled for work. So my mom was an international flight attendant. My dad was an over-the-road truck driver. And I spent a lot of my early childhood years bopping around the family's houses between New York and New Jersey. And, it seemed normal to me. I was like, great, I get to spend time with all of my family. This is awesome. I don't just have to be with my parents. But I do think early on that I got certain messages about, not enoughness and insufficiency. And my mom was extremely strict growing up. She's comes from a Chinese background. So the tiger mom thing is very real. And there was a lot of, I'd say there was just a lot of stuff that she pulled from her culture and what she thought would really, really give me the best start that by anyone else's account would be considered severe emotional abuse.
Yeah.
And, she did better than she got. So it's kind of, take one with the other. And
did you see your were they together growing up or not together? Were they married?
They are still married, but they were not together often. My dad was always traveling once my mom was off out of the air. And so I I didn't see them together often. And then when they were together, it wasn't always so fun.
Yeah.
So, and they're still together to this day.
Yeah.
But I do see that a lot of the challenges that we've experienced in our relationship was an exact recreation of their dynamic. And because I spent most of my time with her, it was an exact recreation of all of the qualities that she'd inherited from her parents.
Yeah.
The defensiveness, the anger, the rage, the projection, the denial, the distortion. I tell you, Maya, I'm like, me? I have these qualities? No way.
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, I have these qualities. I can do it all.
Yeah.
I can be an intense lover and I can burn a house down in the same day.
Yeah.
And it's these past few months have been particularly enlightening in that way, with just a lot of the shadows coming out. And like Ani said earlier, we've decided to use those opportunities as a way to see, okay, this is core wounding from childhood. How can we support me through this? And how can we support him through what comes up for him and his triggers? Because we truly believe that's the reason why it's coming up, because it wants to be witnessed and it wants to be resolved once and for all.
100%. Beautiful. Yeah. And what about you, Ani, in terms of kind of the romantic relationship model that you saw in terms of your parents?
Yeah. So I'll give some more juice. I'll give some. I'm a big proponent of radical vulnerability. So this is good stuff. So, and I really want to share the insights and the benefits of the work that I've done in discovering and really understanding where I came from. So
Nice.
I was born to a very, very poor couple of individuals in India. My dad worked like 3 jobs, and my mom, he's passed away now, and my mom also worked. And so ever since I was a kid, my mom would wake up at like 4 a.m. to make food for me, my dad, and my lunch. And then ever since I was like, I think 3 or 4, I'd be in preschool, and then they drop me off and I'd be at home alone because they were working. So I remember being intensely lonely, like since I can remember anything. And I used to drink bottles of fever medication. So I would fall asleep because I missed my mom too much. And this is like when I was 3-4 years old. So very, very early on. And so that was one dynamic. The other dynamic was that a little later on, and even like a little bit before, but their primary relationship was very conflict intensive. The codependence in the relationship didn't become apparent till a little later on, till my mom retired, and my dad was the one who was working and basically bringing money. But there was a sort of codependent aspect to the relationship because my mom had essentially lost her identity, and I became her identity. So she was very overbearing with me, and it created lots of tension between her and my dad. And I remember that was a time when they started arguing even more. And the conflict would be so much that when I was like 7 years old, I mean, between the age of 7 and like 8, 9, I probably like almost killed myself like a dozen times. I remember standing on the edge of the roof, looking down and being like, I was so just done with the conflict. There was so much conflict that so much screaming, so much. And my dad was also physically abusive because, he needed me to basically fix all the mistakes that he thought he made with himself. And so he was trying to get me to be perfect, which also led him to never say anything positive to me my whole life till the day he died, and demand perfection. And nothing was ever good enough. So those aspects also followed me into adulthood. And later he used to drink a lot. So there's that whole like side of, children of alcoholics and like the emotional disconnection, the numbing, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I developed a series of, it's like almost like the bouquet of a dozen flowers at the florist, a bouquet of core wounding.
Yeah.
There's one of every kind, and there's some little leaves in the middle to make it all fit really nice. And I really struggled. To source love for myself because I never felt good enough. I would source love from women, which would require me to habitually date, and I couldn't be with myself. So, I would basically numb myself with love and sex. And there were patterns of codependency. I needed to be the caretaker. I would date women who I could caretake and I could sort of save because I felt more secure in that attachment style, because if they needed me, then they wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
Right. And because I didn't truly believe that anyone would ever want me. And so I needed them to need me for there to be some level of security in the relationship.
Right.
Now, obviously, this creates, and then I would project my dad's, not being good enough and him always trying to make me different on them, because that was my primary way of relating to myself.
Right.
And so, as you can imagine, it created essentially a series of relationships that all failed, that created a lot of pain, that looked eerily similar.
Right.
And before I met Lee, I had basically just decided to not date and not, be in a relationship for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Because I was determined to, it was actually my dad passing away when I was cremating his dead body that I realized all the ways in which I was becoming like him. And, I was like, fuck, this is not cool. Like, I don't, there's some aspects that I really admired about him that I was proud to embody, but there were all these conditioned responses, all these core wounds, all these coping mechanisms, all these just traits that I brought into my life.
Yeah.
That, even though we were separated by, basically the world, he lived on the other side, my parents did.
Right.
I was still carrying that imprint. And, a lot of this relationship has been our way of, in a way, our imprints match up perfectly. And, one of the things we've been doing is really being the space in which the other person can transcend their parents' patterns. And the only way for that to happen is it needs to come up. It needs to be seen. It needs to be recognized. It needs to be pointed out. And it needs to be held.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the past, we'd get to that point where it would come up, but there was usually non-acceptance of it. There was usually not a space that the other person could hold, where they could put their triggers aside, they could put their reactions and their experience aside, and really unconditionally be there for the other person and be like, hey, I'm going to be the space for you to just fully experience what's coming up for you when this happened. And I'm going to be there with you, right? And I'm going to hold you in a way that you were never held before. And which is precisely the reason why you developed this mechanism to protect yourself.
Right. Beautiful. So that was kind of my next question, which is, when one of you is triggered and the other one isn't, how does the one who is not triggered help the other one calm down or feel the feeling? So I think that is one of the biggest, challenges in relationship, is maybe how do the two people deal with the triggers that come up? How do they meet them exactly? How do they be with them? How do they interpret them? So it sounds like, let's go into this, excuse me, a little bit more. So if one of you is triggered, let's just start with just if one of you is triggered and the other one isn't. So if one of you is triggered, yeah, like, and the other one isn't, how does the other person, and also like, is it different? Because sometimes we each need something different when we're triggered. Also sometimes gender comes in, sometimes, yeah, our attachment style comes in terms of what we need to really feel held and seen and loved and witnessed. So I'm curious, like, if we can go into it even more, like what would be an example, if we could, of what it looks like. We don't even have to share the content, but like what is, or if you do, that's great also.
Yeah. So something I've noticed in both of us is that we both have a strong masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done a lot of exploration over time as well to really welcome more of my feminine energy in, which
Yeah.
I absolutely adore. I
Yeah.
I really do. When I remember to trust that part of myself.
Yeah.
And we have this almost warrior like archetype, both of us. And so when that happens, what I have found that we both need is for the other person to really meet us with gentleness, almost like the opposing force of the warrior is the one who comes in and is the healer, who is gentle and present, who is concerned with the other, who asks, hey, what do you need right now? Or which of your needs are going unmet? I remember Ani and I driving the other day, and I felt triggered after leaving lunch. And I was ready. I was so ready to prepare my grievances and nail them to the door.
Yeah.
And I could feel that activation inside of me.
Yeah.
And it's oddly satisfying sometimes to feel like you're about to walk over the edge and just explode.
That righteous anger is so good.
There's like a catharsis in it.
Yeah.
And so I was getting to that point, and Ani could really sense it. And he was like, which of your needs are going unmet? And as soon as he said that, I could feel myself wanting to be like, no, screw you. Don't ask such a wise question. I want to be mad.
Yeah.
And then I sat with it for a moment, and I was like, well, my need for acknowledgement, my need for consideration. And then when I said it, I'm like, okay, like the charge just sort of, left, and it deflated like a balloon. And then as soon as we entered into that kind of conversation, it was just a real conversation. It was like, hey, what do we need from the grocery store? We need olive oil, eggs, pepper.
Yeah.
And then it became this normal conversation. I'm like, well, here's which needs have gone unmet, and here's why. And he was like, hey, I really want to acknowledge that. And, next time I'll do it differently this way so your needs can be met. Then I'm like, I don't know how I can argue with that. I just really can't. And so it really diffused the situation a lot. And so typically when one of us has the wherewithal to see beyond the trigger and to see beyond defensiveness or protection, then we know to sort of explore the gentleness of like, hey, what do you need right now? Like, do you want a hug? Can I hug you? Would you like feedback? And just gaining permission from the other person and not assuming what they need based on what we think they're experiencing, but truly asking and letting them be the leader of that. And if they don't know, then being in dialogue about not knowing what the needs are at the moment and just sort of taking it from there. And then it becomes this really beautiful tango.
But it really requires, the people in the dynamic to practice not taking things personally. Because as soon as we take something personally, if in that situation, if I had taken her anger, her rage that she was boiling over with as, something that had to do with me, then I lose the ability to hold space for it.
Yeah.
Then I become identified with it. And then rather than responding, I react. And reactions usually just add fuel to the fire. So
then both people are triggered.
Exactly. And so the number one skill to keep peace in a relationship is to learn to not take things personally, because we think that, everything that our partner does is because of us. Typically, almost nothing that our partner does is because of us. It's our own need for self-importance and our, ego's need to always be at the center of attention and be the cause for why the sun goes, spins around in the galaxy that creates this filter through which we look at our partners and look at situations and look at our life, where if something is up with her, I immediately have to jump in and be like, what's going on? Is everything okay? Because that's my inability to deal with her discomfort.
Yeah.
And that's on me. And so typically a lot of these triggers, we have to take, not taking it personally is one principle. Another one is taking 100% responsibility for what's happening inside us.
Yeah.
Right. And also, caring, like being kind, but having a boundary for what's not ours.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, we just need to make our boundaries clear that, hey, like, let me know if I can support, but at this point, my needs are to be in silence or be in peace. And I'm going to, go and do that. Because not something that, we're a space that we're deepening into is how to use space. Because sometimes when people are triggered, at least my nature is try and, work through it. Because it's challenging for me sometimes for there to be, some turbulence in our connection, and for me to like take space in a state of our relationship being turbulent, because it's like that's my hypervigilance from my childhood, where conflict meant literally lack of safety at a physical level, at an emotional level, at a psychological level. So I have really, really, really deep discomfort with open loop conflicts.
Yeah.
Right. And so now what we're doing in our relationship, because that's not fair, because, for Lee, what helps her is she likes space. And sometimes she needs space in the middle of the conflict so that she can figure out how she feels, so she can just get some rest, get some like perspective, get some regulation. Exactly. So, but that doesn't work for me, because at that point is when my core wounds are like being stabbed with like a fiery pitchfork. And so that's the worst time for her to basically ask for space. Right. Because I'm at peak pain. So, one of the practices that we're incorporating is, Lee, can you hold space for me in my pain? Right? Can you hold me in my pain? Can you put your pain aside? And this is a negotiation, right? Because if we continue to smash our heads at the door and say, no, this is my need, and she's like, no, this is my need, that doesn't go anywhere. Right? No one's needs get met. But if we can figure out a path that, okay, like, what are your needs and what's the priority of these needs? Well, these are mine. Well, can we agree that when this happens, you do this, you put your needs aside for a minute so you can help me process this. And then, I meet your need for having space. So you can have time to process, and then we can come back later. And so this is like a really complex, verbal, overt, clear communication-based negotiation that needs to happen. And that's the process of really discovering who we are in the context of a relationship.
There's so much there that you just said that I want to touch on. So many things. But I just want to highlight a couple of things for everyone who's listening, which is one, I love, there's just been so much, and I talk about this in my TEDx talk as well, and I just love to talk about this over and over and over again, which is, in our culture, the word needs or needy, right? Like there's so much negative association with it. And what the truth is, and all the scientific research says, is that your, emotional well-being and emotional responsiveness is the most important thing in a long-term committed relationship. Like that's what's going to make it work, right? And so what you guys are talking about in terms of needs is how can I be emotionally responsive to what's coming up for you, right? And so it's just beautiful to hear both of you just being able to listen to the other person in that way and to give space for the other person And yeah, for you to say, oh wow, like she's so angry, and like I can just be like, oh, what are you really needing right now? Yeah, like that takes a lot of skill and a lot of presence, and exactly putting your ego aside and just being like the grounded rock for the feminine. I also like to talk in feminine masculine dynamics, right? So like that grounded energy so that she can feel all of her feelings, but also come back to a place of feeling held and seen and loved. So yeah, really, really powerful and not easy to do. I'm curious in terms of when both of you are triggered, and yeah, like what happens when both of you are triggered at the same time? Do you have anything that you have for your go-tos when both of you are triggered? I mean, I guess that's what you were talking about at the end, actually.
Yeah. I'll share a new practice we developed, which is, either of us in the middle of a situation where we're both triggered and it doesn't seem like, we're both about to go at each other's throats and there's no backing down, and I'm not backing down and you're not backing down.
Yeah. I'm right. Yeah.
Either of the person can put this out, which is, hey, do you want to just make out instead?
Nice. I love that.
Which, it kind of feels confounding, infuriating, flabbergasting when you receive that, because you're so ready to make your point, to defend your fort, to like duke it out.
Yeah.
And then
fight
your
or flight brain.
right. And your partner's like, hey, do you want to just make out instead? It's like, it just scrambles the brain, because it's like, we can do that. So we don't have to do this. We don't have to do that. Wait, what do you mean we don't have to fight? Like, we're so trained to go at it, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all dealing with unresolved open trauma loops in our bodies. And that charge is like spinning, and it's waiting to be thrown at someone. And that someone is usually our partner, because they feel
They're the
safest.
closest one to you.
They're the closest one, and they'll take it, right? Because they're a safe place to direct all our pain at, right? Because you're my partner, you should be able to take it, or you won't fight back, right? You won't retort,
right?
And so that's like one practice that we use to like just completely sidestep the entire process of processing. Like, let's just like opt out of that, and let's just live life and enjoy each other, because that's what we're for.
Yeah.
You want to share a more useful, I mean, this is useful too, but like a more like some of the things we do when we're both going at it?
Is there anything else that is like a go-to that you really like?
I mean, there's one in which, we ask the question, what if it wasn't you versus me, but you and me versus the pattern? So one thing we do is we try to figure out what the core patterns are. And what we found in that, for every couple, their 90% of their conflicts revolve around like one or two core patterns.
One or two or three core patterns.
Right.
Totally.
And so every couple needs to know what their core patterns are. Exactly. And so once we've labeled it, once we have identified it, then if it comes up, we can be like, hey, do you want to just team up, versus this thing, rather than it being you versus me?
I love that. That's beautiful.
And that completely changes the orientation, because now we're on the same team. And now we can look at that and be like, wow, can you believe that thing is back? I wonder what it wants. Like, what do you think it needs from you? What do you think it needs from me? Like, what do we want to do about it? Do we want to just like give it what it needs and, send it away? Do we want to just, like leave it out and just focus on each other and ourselves? And that also creates space, and that also depersonalizes again the situation, because the problem is we get so attached to the conflict, the pattern, the tendency, the response.
She did this, he said that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. It's kind of looking at the pattern as it's almost like a system. We're in this system, and like, how can we look at the system from an objective view? And then also maybe, if one thing changes in the system, then the whole system changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want another one?
We've actually taken notes as well.
Oh yeah, that's right.
While conflict has been occurring. I mean, it's beneficial for our work because we work with couples. So
exactly.
We are kind of our own guinea pigs.
Exactly.
And so we study our patterns, which so sometimes in conflict-ridden situation, we'll be in the situation, but then we'll also have a meta conversation about what we think is happening.
Yeah.
And it's this weird oscillation between being first person in the situation and then being third person observer, which is mindfulness, is stepping into the role of the observer. And when we both step out of the participant and into the observer together, then it also diffuses some of the frenetic charge of the situation. And we may decide to enter back into it, but then we're also seeing like, hey, looks like this is happening quite often. Let's like talk about that for a second versus just the specific thing that we're duking out right now.
Yeah, that is so huge. That's huge.
So we have like pages and pages and pages of notes from our patterns, from our conflicts.
Yeah.
And we do weekly relationship retrospectives where we look at the week and we're like, hey, what went well? Which one of your needs got met? Which needs didn't get met? How can I be a better partner to you?
Nice.
What are the ways in which I could use support? What are the ways in which you could use support? What do we want to start doing? What do we want to stop doing?
Yeah.
And we find that running a relationship like a business is actually hugely helpful because then we're able to give the relationship attention.
Yeah.
And most couples that experience a lot of challenge, they only give their relationship attention when something's not working.
Yeah.
There's very little acknowledgement of what is working, like the things they love about the other person, what they really appreciate. And those things go unsaid. And the only time there's really overt communication is when something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so that balance, like, is something that we try. I mean, we also, like, all this being said, we also mess up royally a lot. And, you know, we sometimes we're both seeing red and it's just like, you know, we're in conflict for a couple of days and then we come back and we're like, okay, that wasn't fun, but now can we go back to enjoying each other?
Exactly. Beautiful. And okay. So, and I love that practice, I've never heard that name, relationship retrospective. But I really love that practice. And I have my clients who are in couples do that as well. And just the weekly check-in where it's like, what is working? What's not working? What do I really appreciate about you? You know, this week, what did I really appreciate? Like, what is something maybe that's like a withhold that I haven't shared this week that I want to share? I think just having that weekly time is so powerful to really touch in a deep way, especially if people are really busy and there's like children and all that stuff. So my next question is, for all the single people listening, for each of you, what is the number one trait that you would recommend looking for in a partner?
I mean, the extent to which they can sense that partner has deep love, acceptance, and compassion for themselves by far, because our reality around us is a reflection of what we create inside. Yeah. And so if there's a lot of self-loathing or any sign of self-loathing and listen, we all have it. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
However, when someone's done their work, it's pretty apparent. You can tell when someone's at home in themselves and when they're good, they're just solid. Yeah. And sure, things may bother them. Sure, they may lack confidence from time to time. Yeah. When someone is truly in themselves, it's a great sign in a relationship because it shows that they've done their work and they can really show up as an equitable partner in the relationship. And, if that's something you're seeking in someone else, it's also our responsibility to create the space for acceptance and love within ourselves.
Yeah.
Number one thing that leads to most relationship issues, if not all of them, is some sort of gap that we see within ourselves. And then that gap gets projected out at someone. And so, when we don't feel badly about ourselves, then we don't take things personally, because it's like someone telling me my hair's blonde. I wouldn't get offended. My hair's not blonde, it's brown. That's it.
Yeah.
But if I really had an issue with it and I thought my hair might be blonde, and if it were blonde, it's not a good thing, then I'd get offended by someone making a statement like that.
Yeah.
So once we've really sort of done that work, it shows that someone's ready to arrive at the relationship, willing to contribute and to hold space, as well as to share vulnerably what's coming up for them.
I would say,
Love that. Thank you.
a growth mindset. There's a big difference between coming into a relationship because you want to be done. You want to be done being alone, done, being single, done doing whatever, and you just want to quote unquote settle down.
Yeah.
If you're entering into a relationship because you want to grow. And in my experience, the most successful relationships are between people who both are, interested in growing. They're curious about who they are, who the other person is, and they're looking not to be done and to just sort of coast, but actually, use each other to grow. And that's why, I really believe that a romantic relationship is the ultimate container for spiritual growth. And, our partners are our greatest spiritual teachers if we allow them to be, if we see them in that way. They can also be heinous demons who've been sent by Satan to haunt our, existence, and sometimes it may feel like that. But the other idea that, what is this showing me? How is this pointing to where I have work to do, and how is this a gift, and what do I want to do with this awareness, is always available. That perspective is always there, because that's how life is. Everything is designed for our growth. But if we enter into a relationship with someone who sees things that way, who looks at life as, hey, wow, I wonder what I'm going to learn today. I wonder what you're going to show me today. I wonder, in what ways I'm going to transcend my old patterns and, my childhood wounding, and, stop the trauma that's been passed down from generation to generation, because, in this container, we can do the work to heal it, to transcend it.
100%. Beautiful. I love both of those answers. What a nice combo, someone who has both of those. So, that is such a cool distinction between the okay, I'm just want to meet my person and be done, instead of I want to meet my person, continue to grow and evolve and blossom and expand, and all of that. So it's a real good distinction. So there's just so many things I want to talk to you guys about, but it's getting to the end of our time, so I can't keep you captive all day, unfortunately. But it's been such an honor and pleasure to get to know the two of you. And I think our listeners are going to really learn a lot from this. And would love to, if you guys can each share, if anyone wants to contact you or get a hold of you, how to do that.
Sure. People can reach out to me. I'm at leenoto.com, LEENOTO. You can also email me, hello@leenoto.com, and you can find me on Instagram at leenoto_.
Awesome.
I'm at animanian.com, ANIMANIAN.com, ani.manian on Instagram. And our couples work can be found at untamedintimacy.com. Nice. And it's untamed_intimacy on Instagram. And we just love serving people. And this is not just what we do, but who we are. And, I get the same vibe from you.
Yeah.
And it's really just a privilege for us to do this work and, go through a lot of the stuff so that, we can point
Wounded
other people.
healers. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm 100% a wounded healer.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. We're all just trying to heal ourselves, through our reflections in the world.
Yeah.
That's really like the core, because there really is no other.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's really cool to share the space with you, Maya. We're such huge fans, and we deeply appreciate and honor the work that you do, and the way you're bringing awareness to these really deeply unconscious patterns that everyone in the world goes through. And so, that's so important, the work that you're doing. And, I really, really, really appreciate the contribution that you're making in the world.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I feel the same about the two of you. And I agree. It's just such an honor and a gift and pleasure to be able to do the work that we do in the world to help people grow and heal and reach their dreams. And I am also very privileged to exactly use everything that I've ever learned in myself and then be able to give it to someone else. So yeah, what a cool cycle of giving and receiving. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a joy, and I look forward to talking to you guys in the future.
Likewise. Thank you.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to Rewire Your Attachment Style. This is Maya Diamond. To receive your 2 free gifts to help you on your journey to lasting love and to start rewiring your attachment style today, go to empowerlove.us/love.